Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ICoC's general monthly meeting. I am just working to share my screen at the moment, so just bear with me for a minute. That's not the right share. That's the one that I want to share. So I am now officially calling our August meeting to order. Thank you all very much for joining us. We have a great agenda for today that we'll follow a similar format now moving forward. In a moment, I will confirm that we have quorum, and from there, we will change up in the future, running through a roll call, but I'll introduce some of the executive committee who are on the call today when I go through my president's report. I think that's probably a better way to start going through the membership, and we'll find an efficient way to do a roll call as this group expands later on. So as I mentioned, I will be giving a president's report. I'll be checking in with James to see if there's a VP's report, and Derek, whether there's a Chief Operating Officer report and comments, and then finally over to Tony for a secretary's report after that. We will be then having a presentation that will be introduced by Derek from TechX, and then some open discussion after that. That's our overall agenda today. So noting that we do actually have quorum, I will call the meeting to order and ask that we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented for today. So can I get a mover and a seconder from the voting members of the executive committee? Thank you. Derek's nodding as a mover. Can I get
I'll second.
Thank you, James, as a seconder. Now, are there any objections to accepting the agenda for today? Any abstentions to accepting the agenda for today? Motion carries then. We have our agenda accepted. We did have an executive committee meeting last week for which that committee has the minutes. So I'll ask again for that committee to move and second to table the minutes. So if anyone would like to move and second the minutes from last week, please.
That, Carolyn.
Sorry, I heard Tony and I think James. So they're tabled minutes. Is there any discussion from the minutes? Hearing none, I will make the call. Are there any objections to the minutes? Anyone abstaining from voting on the minutes? Then the motion carries. So now in the agenda, as I mentioned, we will move on to the President's report. So in the last several weeks, we've been going over the overall structure of the ICoC and really thinking about our principles for lobbying, the services that we offer. And I just wanted to provide an overview today of the summation of that information. It's how we will present going forward about the ICoC, certainly in these general meetings, as just a high-level summary. So Interplanetary Chamber of Commerce, as we said, we are registered in the United States as a 501c6 organisation. Now, our services that we provide, there are 6 primary service areas. These are supported by subcommittees now that we have established. So within the ICoC, we have a role to lobby, to influence different legislative or administrative action in support of the overall space economy. So in a moment, I'll speak to some of the areas that we have focused on from a lobbying perspective that are the broad principles, we believe, for the ICoC. For our members, we also will be providing support for marketing of their businesses and operations through their listing on our website and other services that we'll be providing. We also, beyond just running these monthly meetings, we'll be running other forms of networking events. We are planning in-person options as well as online. It's very important for a Chamber of Commerce to be able to support those events. So we are looking at a range of options of events that we will be running in the future. So there are our services that are listed on the left. Going down on the right, we'll be providing some educational opportunities for our membership. That'll be in partnership with the educational members that we have in the collective. So at the moment, those companies that we have are Space Career Academy and also Ontario Tech University. We're already working on some different course material for people wanting to enter various businesses in the space economy, but we'll also be looking at training courses that we can run for our member organisations as well. We are supporting a talent pipeline where we can create some strategic partnerships between the educational members and businesses to foster those talent pipelines. So for people to gain some knowledge in the area of a particular sector with its relevance for space, and then being able to create those internship, co-op and other employment opportunities for people to gain experience in the space sector and for us to grow the talent pool and pipeline within that area. And then finally, we have business services and membership growth. We're going to be creating and executing a number of strategies to grow our membership, but also to provide some consulting services. So there's a range of different services that businesses in the space sector, particularly startups or small businesses in the space sector, can benefit from in terms of economies of scale. So we are going to be establishing various ways that they can tap into those consulting services as well. So we have established subcommittees now that are across all of these areas. For those joining us today, if you have not become a member of ICoC, I would encourage you to reach out. Certainly at the end, let us know that you're interested. We are in the process of changing up our website. So if you have any issues in joining through interplanetarychamber.com, you can certainly reach out. We can have those discussions at the end of the meeting. So in terms of the area that I wanted to focus on today is in our lobbying, because it really sets the frame of the scope area and the vision of why we set up the Interplanetary Chamber of Commerce in the first place. So there are 6 broad areas that we are lobbying. So the first area is the space economy. And broadly speaking, this means that we believe that we've entered a new era where space is no longer just a sector. We were talking about this just before. But it is an economy with many sectors that operate within it. So what we see is that the boundaries of what's classed as terrestrial and in space matter less, because many businesses now ubiquitously want to just be able to stretch into space. So this has implications for grant schemes and policies and procedures in many countries when they consider space as a sector versus space as an economy. And it has very important implications for for-profit businesses in the space economy. Going across the top, the next one that's very important for us is the changing role of government. So we believe that the role of government is changing, and this is evidenced by Axiom's provisioning of the new International Space Station. So this is running now and will be running as a commercial endeavour for which the different space agencies and governments on an international level will create those engagements directly with Axiom rather than the current space station as it is and the ownership structure for that. So whereas in the past governments would set aside funding for a particular initiative that they have an interest in space, we are seeing that the for-profit sector is starting to have the ability to create its own economy, its own supply chain infrastructure that doesn't rely necessarily on the funding to provision that coming directly from government. So we see this as a very important change and distinction. So for those two areas, we have had some initiatives already in the United States and also in Australia to, and actually in Canada where I am based, to work with various agencies within the government on this transition that we see is happening. Going now to the bottom left, colonisation. There are many questions that need to be asked, debated and explored in order for mankind to consider colonisation beyond Earth. So one of the things that we're excited to be part of the exploration of is understanding of what happens when we try to have humans, with fertilisation to create a new embryo for human in space. Ultimately doing potentially testing with other animals, but we have to consider if we want to colonize, we have to understand what happens for a human for them to grow in and outside of the womb and for that to happen in various stages in space. So very important questions. There are some very interesting activities happening in that area that we're going to be speaking about in the coming months. But there is a lot when we start to consider colonisation in space. Moving across the bottom to the middle at the bottom, the supply chain and technology. These focus areas include supply chain, or GO, where we have this great presentation coming today. Supply chain management in space, interoperability, cybersecurity. These are all key areas. Thank you for that. So as I was saying, the supply chain information at the bottom there, cybersecurity, very important as part of that, with creation, acquisition, transmission, processing, visualization, and storage of data. On the right-hand side, the two other areas are really systemic and overarching in all of what we do. The first is equity, diversity, and inclusion. So throughout our operations for the ICoC and within the overall space economy, that should say, not sector, we'll strive to enable equity, diversity and inclusion. And then at the bottom, we fundamentally believe that the growth of the space economy must be performed in a sustainable way that is very conscious of from a conservation standpoint. So they're the areas that we are lobbying. So we have an executive committee in place for the ICoC. As I mentioned, myself as the President, CEO, Founder and Director. So who am I beyond the ICoC? I am the Dean of the Faculty of Business and IT here at Ontario Tech University. And I have also currently got two missions running, research missions running on the International Space Station. So I have experience with a number of government space agencies and different commercial partners. One of the missions I'm running to do is related to the private astronaut missions that are provisioned by Axiom. So I work with Axiom and SpaceX, as well as NASA and a number of the Canadian Space Agency and a number of the other agencies. James Seacrest, he'll be giving his own introduction in a minute as part of his report. He's the Vice President. Andrew Lord is our Treasurer, one of the founders. He's not on the call today, but he has a number of interests in space in the areas of insurance and telecommunications. Tony, who you've heard from a couple of times today, he's our third founder, along with myself and Andrew, the secretary and also one of the directors for the ICoC. I'll let him in his secretary's report introduce himself. The same with Derek as our Chief Operating Officer. Again, he will introduce himself in a minute. Hi, Derek. We have three other members, Amanda, Manny and Kelvin, who round out our executive committee, or ExCom at the moment, looking after the overall operations of the ICoC. So that's our lineup. So that's our broad structure. We are progressing the work of the subcommittees, as I mentioned. So I encourage you to become a member, enable us to be able to showcase your business and enable you to become part of some of the work in our subcommittees. So at that point, there's nothing to vote on today with my report. So I will now take the opportunity to hand over to to James for his Vice President's introduction and report. So over to you, James.
Hi, thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, I'm James Seacrest. I'm the Vice President, and my background is 25 years in biotechnology, pharmacology, nuclear medicine, and mostly toxicology and nuclear medicine was my focus for about 20 years. In the last 5 years, I've been working in space medicine with a couple of startups. Offload Biotech is one of them. Explore Biogravity, which is an Australian company, is another one. I'm the president of the Americas, basically, for sales and research. And they're doing microgravity experiments on ground to translate to some things that have been done in space. As far as the Vice President's report, this is really the inaugural meeting, but there's no real report. But what I can say is that what I'm going to focus on as far as being the Vice President is two major areas. One is marketing and getting our name out, and that includes going to shows and conferences, maybe having a booth, definitely, face to face, talking to people, handshaking, that kind of thing. And then the other one is will be the membership and membership driving. And I've also am trying to enlist some people from other countries that may have a network that can bring some of members from not only East Asia, but also West Asia. I've asked Mohammed from Melogen Labs to actually try to help me bring some West Asian companies in Pakistan and India, which are going really big in space industry right now. So that's about it.
Great, thank you very much. So I'd now like to ask Derek, as the Chief Operating Officer, to provide his introduction and report, please.
Hi, everyone. Sure, great introduction there. My name is Derek Friend. I'm 30 years in the ICT industry. I've worked in multiple locations around the world, most parts of Africa, Asia Pacific, UAE, and I work for many USA companies as well, providing independent advisory and government consulting services to Fortune 500, as well as small startups as well. I've worked with advisory for BDO, KPMG, Cisco, Ericsson, Nokia, Sync, TE, CommScope, Verizon, delivering and building backbone strategies for telecom companies throughout the world. Thank you, Carolyn, for the introduction. Yes, I am the COO, and my role here is to enhance the community and grow the community worldwide as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Derek. So now over to our Secretary, Tony, for his Secretary's report and introduction.
Yeah, hey, everybody. Apologize for not having a camera online. Having some issues at home, so we're just going to kind of hop in here and make it real quick. Like Carolyn said, and thank you for that introduction, I'm the Secretary of the Interplanetary Chamber of Commerce, one of the directors and one of the founders as well. Very fortunate to have founded this with Carolyn and Andrew Lord, the third director as well. It's been absolutely amazing. As far as the Secretary's report, we are growing pretty steadily. We've got a lot of new members that have been joining over the last week. I think we have 3 or 4 over the last couple of days itself. So we are growing on that end. As far as the internal programs I'm working on, almost everything that there is, but from membership, networking, and events. I will be at IAC this year in Milan, Italy in October to present a paper regarding the Interplanetary Chamber of Commerce. So we will be there for that, helping out with membership growth and structure, as well as education and talent pipeline. I'm also the secretary for the Washington Space Business Roundtable. For those in the DC area, many, if not all, of the commercial space companies that have an office in Washington, DC are members. They do various events, and they focus on STEM as well. So happy to carry the Interplanetary Chamber of Commerce's services and membership base over to that as well, and vice versa. Just being here to help it grow. As far as a quick background for me, I've got over 10 years in federal policy for the U.S. government. I also work with lobbying, one of the things that I work on. So I'm on the Hill at least once a week, talking to senators and congressmen in the U.S. as well as around the world, lobbying on behalf of our members and our organization, helping us grow and create policies that's going to help the commercial space industry grow as well. Outside of that, just kind of whatever the organization needs, be one of the directors and founders, just happy to be a part of this and happy to watch it grow and have so many awesome members that have joined and just getting to meet people around the world. So thank you all for being here. I apologize for the technical issues that was somehow on me, so apologize for all that, but thank you all for being here. And for those watching the recording, thank you and apologies on that as well. So back to you, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of cameras, it looks like mine has still not started up, so I apologize for that. But now we will move on to the next stage in the agenda, which I'll be handing back over to Derek to introduce our speaker today, who'll be presenting from TechX. So over to you, Derek.
So thank you, Carolyn. Which is a great segue into one of the conversations we have in terms of a global strategy and global customers. One of our customers that we signed on board this month is from ICoC, and her name is Noah Suzman, and she's also a fellow South African. So welcome to the forum, Noah. And if you'd like to just talk on your company and what you can do and what you can bring to our viewers and team.
So, Derek, thank you very much for the introduction. And Tony, Carolyn, thank you as well. It's very exciting to be a new member of iChamberX. Definitely a novel and interesting space. And one that I think is, as everyone's mentioned, is very much in the growth format. So we should be seeing a lot of exciting things coming. So I'll talk, I'm only, it's just in a short space of time. I think what I'll do is I'll give a little bit of an overview of kind of where we sit in the industry and just the challenges that a lot of the companies as they are expanding out will face, and a little bit about how we can help. So I think that as the, as companies are growing and expanding out in the space sector or economy or industry, one of the issues that will come up, as Carolyn mentioned, is in the supply chain and technology. And we see that, a lot of the companies need to get their satellites out to other countries. They need to move their IT hardware, their networking equipment, the security surrounding their data. And interestingly enough, we've actually moved cosmetic ray detectors. So there's all sorts of things and balloons that need to come to move globally. The issue is that with all the geopolitics that's happening, with all the different requirements and complexities around the different countries, and very much being product specific and country specific, it gets very challenging for companies who want to build points of presence or need to move this technology to other countries to actually get there in a compliant and secure manner, in a timely manner. And if they don't have a registered entity in the country, what ends up happening is that they're not actually even able to move their gear. So where we kind of come in is that we act as that registered entity with all the import licenses. We will consult and we will advise and really help them plan their global strategy, their deployment of their tech, make sure it's moved in a seamless, hassle-free way, and just really allow them to expand and to be able to do what they want to do, and that's explore space and just kind of grow in their sector and the industry on into all these different locations. And we'll be able to do that in a seamless and compliant manner, and really just advise them proactively so that they're not going to run into any issues and any penalties or fines or anything else that may come in if it's not done correctly. So that's a little bit about what we do, very high level. There's lots to talk about in this industry, in the supply chain. It's a very hot topic now, just in terms of compliance and complexity. So always happy to have a discussion. And, you know, I had a discussion recently with Derek and Tony, and we were just discussing how it's just very much become a very relevant, you know, conversation now. And as I mentioned earlier, that we had very recently some cosmic ray detectors, a few $1 million worth of them, that we moved for a very big reseller who was servicing one of the space industries. So yes, there's definitely lots of areas that we cover. So happy to field any questions. And thank you again for the opportunity to introduce TechX, and looking very forward to being part of this amazing association and just help, you know, growing together. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions come up, and I will be introducing you as and when needed.
Perfect. Thank you. It's always
Yeah.
good to work with a fellow South African.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great. Back to Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Noah. Does anyone have any questions today for Noah?
And Carol, I'm not
So-
seeing anything in the chat right now.
So no, I'll start with the questions. You're based in South Africa, correct? Actually down the road from me, which is great. Talk about some of the import exports of the companies that you work with, and where you actually work in the US as well.
Sure. Perfect. That's definitely a very good question. A lot of people think because in South Africa, we're based in South Africa, that we service import and exports in and out of South Africa. But we actually have 200 global locations. We're a US company, and our operation sits in South Africa. It's actually great because it's kind of in between all the time zones. But we service companies across the world. We service from the very big OEMs such as Cisco, Dell, NetApp, all the way through the channel to some of the big end users, including Microsoft, Google, and you know, many more. We've worked, as I said, in the space sector, satellites, you know, a lot of the companies who are building points of presence, those who are working, supporting, you know, Wi-Fi in the airplanes, so they need to have satellites globally. We work with them. I think, and again, because we have a 200 global footprint, global destination, you know, foreign destinations, we are able to import and export into almost anywhere in the world. And I think the biggest challenge that comes with this is the fact that you'll have a company who maybe needs to get a satellite or some point, you know, some build out in a remote location. And they definitely don't want an entity there. They don't have an entity, but they in a catch-22 because they need to get their gear in, but they don't have an entity. They don't understand the compliance. And it kind of puts them in a position where they can't grow unless they find a compliant solution to bring the gear in. So that's kind of where we fit in. And we do this, you know, we're moving thousands of shipments all over the world.
Fantastic. No, thank you. Definitely someone to know.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Carolyn.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you again, Noah, very much for presenting on your business today. As we mentioned, supply chain is a key element for space, and understanding how to, in an international context, prepare something for space and even interplanetary context, and the merging of the two when you're constructing that supply chain, all very important. So thank you again for presenting today. So we move. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. So we move now into the general business part of the meeting to find out if there's any other business that anyone wants to table at the committee at this general meeting today.
Nothing from my side.
Thank you, Derek. All right. Well, not hearing any other anyone mentioning that they have other business, then we can close out, officially adjourn this meeting for this month. I look forward to the opportunity to be able to host the meeting, or for us to have the meeting, the next general meeting, in a month's time. To be able to adjourn the meeting, I need to have the voting members to move and second, and then ultimately vote on the adjournment of the meeting. So can I get a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting, please?
Yeah, I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, so that was James and Derek. So does anyone object to the motion on the table to adjourn the meeting? Does anyone abstain? The motion carries. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you in this general meeting for the ICoC next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.